Well, Russia and Ukraine is certainly likely to be very high on the agenda. While they haven't been referenced specifically as wars in this summit so far, there have been discussions upon them because they are a major factor on the current rising prices of energy, rising prices of food supplies. So because of the geopolitical tensions they pose, because of the economic challenges they pose, they are being discussed by the G20 countries. The address that was given by well as by India's foreign minister, it called for a common consensus between the G20 countries, because we have seen that the G20 nations have been fractured in their approach towards Russia's war in Ukraine. There wasn't a joint communique issued at the end of the last meeting, which was the finance ministers meeting. So at this meeting, it's very important for the G20 nations to come up with a joint consensus, and that is why that has been a major push from India's side at this meeting.
You know, one of our ministers, the international minister here in South Africa, was decrying the other day the fact that this conflict has overtaken all the other issues that are also urgent in the world. Are we getting a similar sense here at the G20 meeting that important conversations will fall by the wayside?
Absolutely, that certainly seems to be the sense, because that is the elephant in the room, Russia's war in Ukraine. And because of that, a lot of other important conversations, even though they're not being sidelined, they are not getting as much attention, or they're not being discussed at the top of the priority list. And that is why we have seen several Indian leaders address this issue, saying that this will certainly be discussed, but there are other issues that need to be talked about as well. Among those things, what's on India's agenda is talk about sustainable development. It's a topic that affects not only India, but the entire global south, including countries like South Africa, like Brazil. Apart from that, India is focusing heavily on high debt levels in several countries, which is a crisis that's being faced by Sri Lanka and Pakistan in Asia at the moment. Apart from that, India is also wanting to discuss measures that the countries can collectively take to tackle terrorism and cross-border terrorism particularly. So we are seeing that even though Russia's war in Ukraine is certainly the biggest topic in the room, there are several other issues that are likely to be addressed by the foreign ministers.
You speak about developmental concerns for countries in the South, and not only South Africa. Is South Africa part of this? South Africa is also part of BRICS, the BRICS nations. Is there any emphasis or conversation at all in the regard of BRICS, or is this entirely a global conversation?
But it certainly seems like this is an entirely global conversation, but many of the things that are going to be put on the agenda, that are being discussed on the agenda, are likely to impact the BRICS nations, especially because this is the G20, the presidency is being held under India. India wants certain issues to be on the top of the agenda. So, for example, the issues of sustainability, the issues of climate change, these are, although global issues, but the global south, and especially the BRICS nations, are the countries that are going to be the worst affected if these issues get out of hand. So even though they are not focusing particularly on the BRICS nation per se, they are certainly focusing on these very crucial issues that are important for the BRICS nations.